Who should you ask for investment advice? What's the difference between a property investment advisor and a buyer's agent? When do you need one? When do you need the other? How do you know who's a property spruiker? And how do you know who to run away from? Oh, by the way, what can a property advisor actually advise you about and tell you? And what can't they tell you? Maybe they can't tell you what you want to hear. That's exactly what we're going to discuss today on the Michael Yardney podcast. At the end of this longer session today, you're going to understand who to ask for advice and who to avoid. So, welcome to this week's episode of the Michael Yardney podcast.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, where each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect and pass on your wealth through strategic property advice. Now here's your host, Michael Yardney, Australia's most trusted property commentator, who has once again been voted our leading expert in wealth creation. That's the fifth time he's won a similar award in the last 7 years.
Who do you ask for property advice? Look, with so many mixed messages and vested interests out there, it's really hard to know who you can really trust. I know that each year we run our Property Investor Consumer Sentiment Survey, and it reveals that people ask many and varied sources for property advice. But since most investors fail to achieve the financial freedom they deserve, less than 8% ever own two properties or more, a better question would probably be, who should you be asking for advice? And that's what this week's podcast is designed to help you do, to cut through the clutter, to understand who to ask, to understand what you can expect. Because at the end of this, I'm going to explain to you how to separate an advisor from a spruiker and why a buyer's agent is different to an advisor. I'm going to tell you what an advisor can tell you and what not to expect your advisor to do. There's lots of things that people expect their advisors to be able to help them with, and they really can't. And if they suggest they can, maybe they're not really an advisor at all. So let's start with who you could ask for advice. Here are the people you could turn to. Well, first of all, no one. Many beginning investors think they understand a bit about real estate because they've lived in a home, they've rented a home, they've lived in an apartment. But that's a big mistake, and probably one of the reasons that 50% of first-time investors sell up their properties within 5 years. While they may know their local neighbourhood, that's very, very different to understanding property markets and property investment. Okay, who else could you ask? Well, you could ask family and friends, and I understand why many people would do that. But the better question may be, are they really financial experts? How many millionaires do you have in your family? If not, don't ask them, because often their advice is going to be to avoid property because it's risky. That's why they haven't gotten involved. Others ask the real estate agent, but remember, estate agents work for the vendor. It's their job to help the vendor or the seller achieve the best price. So they're unlikely to tell you about other great properties that somebody else has got listed down the road. I know some people ask a mortgage broker, and while it's really important to have an investment-savvy broker on your side, helping you through the finance maze, particularly at the moment where finance is difficult, most mortgage brokers don't understand the property market well enough to advise about investment-grade properties. So get finance advice from them. Don't ask them about property, nor should you ask your accountant. Your accountant should advise you on tax matters, on structuring, but really most don't have the intimate knowledge about the property markets required to give good investment advice. And avoid financial planners. While most are licensed to sell financial products, they're not able to advise on real estate, not only because they lack the sound understanding of property, but the company that they work for doesn't allow them to advise on real estate. Those who do recommend property usually have a really biased view because they're given significant commissions to sell from a stock list. So avoid financial planners, and of course you've got to avoid property marketers. While these salespeople may seem to be on your side, they're really selling product for the developer who's likely to make the biggest profit out of the deal. And be careful with investment seminars and workshops. Now, disclaimer, I do seminars and I conduct workshops, but I've never sold a property at the back of the room. So ask yourself, is the person conducting the event an investment expert in their field? How long have they been financially secure? And how do they make their money teaching others? Of course, there's also property mentors. There seems to be an abundance of property mentors around, some who give great guidance, while others are really just property sellers or marketers in disguise. So let me make things clear. I believe it's important to have mentors. They see your blind spots, they give you guidance, they support you, they expand the way you think. Just be careful who you choose and ensure that your mentor has achieved the results you want to achieve. Again, a disclaimer, I've run a mentorship program for well over a decade. I've mentored over 2,000 people. Oh, by the way, you can find out all about it at michaelyardney.com.au, michaelyardney.com.au. I'd love to have you as part of my mentorship program. But in my mentorship program, we don't advise you to buy or sell properties. I give you individual advice and we teach you about the mindset of success, but some mentors are thinly disguised salespeople. Okay, another person people ask advice from is a buyer's agent, and they can be great in helping you select the right property, but most are just order takers. They don't devise a plan that takes into account your family's future needs or your risk profile. Now, again, disclaimer, Metropole has buyer's agents in Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane, but they implement the strategy our property strategists put together. So when you look at the list of people that most investors ask, what they're missing out on is somebody independent, somebody unbiased, a property advisor, a property strategist. And in my mind, it's critical to have a trusted advisor when you're making property investment decisions, whether you're a beginner or even when you're experienced. It's just too hard to do it on your own or do it by trial and error. There's just a huge learning fee involved of time, of money, of effort and heartache. I find it interesting that while most wealthy people have and are prepared to pay for trusted advisors in many areas of their life, the average person's got no advisors, or they get their advice from salespeople who are perceived to be advisors, but they're really very far from independent. On the other hand, following the teachings and proven systems of those who already achieved what you want to achieve, who've retained wealth through a number of property cycles, won't necessarily guarantee success. It makes your success much, much more likely. So what do property advisors actually do? Well, I see my role as a property advisor as to help clients grow, protect and pass on their wealth using property as a vehicle. While people come to the team at Metropole for property advice, in fact, they're really coming for something else. Some are looking for financial freedom, others are looking for more choices in life, they're wanting to work because they want to work, not because they have to, yet others want to leave a legacy for their family or for the community. So property is really just a vehicle that they're keen to use to achieve their end goals. And while most property advisors come from a real estate background, the property strategists at Metropole come from a wealth background, from a financial planning background, from a planning background, but they've really got a good understanding of property and are successful property investors themselves. You see, at Metropole, our property strategist's job is not to sell clients property, but to help them safely increase their wealth over the long term. Many, many years ago, when I first saw a gap in the market for sound strategic advice, I set about providing my services as a property strategist. I was the first one I knew to call themselves a property strategist. Many now call themselves property advisors, property strategists. Some of them, unfortunately, are thinly disguised salespeople or not really qualified to give in-depth advice. So let's have a look at what a good property strategist can do and what they can't do. So let's start first of all with the list of what a good property advisor can, or maybe I better say should be doing. First of all, a good advisor is going to start to get to know their clients' hopes, their fears, and then be future focused to help them achieve their long-term financial goals. With so many mixed messages about property investment out there, many coming from parties with vested interests, a good property advisor is going to help remove their clients' anxiety by simplifying the complex situations. They're going to provide clarity around the complicated world of wealth creation, which involves much more than just property. It involves finance, tax, economics, and the law. So a good advisor is going to help their clients by advising them about the risks as well as the rewards of property investment. That's what's missing with a lot of people. While most buyer's agents or property salespeople are transactional and think of the current sale or purchase, a professional property advisor is going to aim to develop a long-term relationship with their clients and understand the next 2 or 3 steps even before taking the first step. Many clients come to real estate advisors looking for the next big thing. Some are looking for a shortcut for the next hotspot or way to get rich. Instead, a qualified property strategist is going to stop their clients from speculating by recommending proven strategies, ones that have worked at all stages of the cycle or over the long term. Another thing to look for with a good independent advisor is that they shouldn't have any properties for sale, but they'll have a list of potential options and refer clients to a buyer's agent who's going to be part of their team to find the best opportunities in the market that suits the client's budget, their plans and their risk profile. A strategic advisor is never going to put any pressure on their clients. They're not going to force them to make any investment decisions, but their knowledge, their research, their experience is going to help their clients select an investment property that's the highest and best use of their funds and one that's going to work hard for them over the long term. I've found that a wise property strategist is going to help their clients avoid the big mistakes that are made by the average investor. In fact, that's almost as much a part of our job as property strategists at Metropole than actually telling people what to do. We're telling people what not to do, and we earn our fee simply by helping our clients avoid the devastating errors that are made by so many investors who've lost significant amounts of money by investing in mining towns, in regional locations, house and land packages, or off-the-plan properties. Of course, a great advisor is going to do a lot more than that for their fee. By being an independent student of history, a good strategist is going to be able to bring a level of perspective, give insights, and often give optimism at times when the media is very pessimistic. And maybe vice versa also. They're going to actually bring you down when the media is very positive. A good advisor is also going to be able to advise their clients to invest their money in a way that they, the advisor, do themselves. In other words, they should be experienced investors themselves, not enthusiastic amateurs, which many advisors are. And a good strategist is going to meet with you regularly and objectively assess the performance of your property portfolio, assuring you're heading in the right direction. So as you can see, it takes years of learning, experience, and the perspective that only comes from investing through a number of property cycles to become a great property strategist. So if that's what a good property strategist does, let's have a look at some things a good property advisor can't do. Because as I continue on and discuss some of those things, you're going to find that some property advisors are going to claim they are able to do these things they really can't or shouldn't be doing. I guess they tend to do this because they're not able to deliver on many aspects of the list that I've just discussed with you, the things that skilled professional advisors can deliver. So even a good advisor can't predict the future. They won't be able to tell you how the market's going to perform, what will happen to interest rates, or what level of capital growth a particular property is going to exhibit. They won't be able to find the next hotspot for you. Yet so many so-called advisors suggest they can. In essence, they give their clients what they're requesting rather than what they need. Sound property advice, solid advice. Look, even the most qualified advisor won't be able to pick the best time to purchase an investment property, other than to remind you that the best time to invest was, 20 years ago, and the second best time is today. A good advisor won't be able to help you get rich quickly or achieve extraordinarily high rates of return without taking on extra risks. So, what I've tried to share with you is some of the things you can expect from an advisor, some of the things a good advisor can't do, and if people are suggesting they can, maybe they're really not on your side. So now let's have a look at what's the difference between what I've been talking about, a property strategist and a buyer's agent. Because there is a big difference, even though many buyer's agents will play this down, suggesting they're the right person to help investors. In my mind, it's important to have both of them as part of your team, a property strategist and a buyer's agent. So your property strategist is going to look at the big picture and formulate a strategy that makes sense to you after considering your position, your aspirations, your timeframes, your budget and your risk profile. At Metropole, we do a strategic plan which is going to give you a whole lot of scenarios. For example, should you buy a house first? Should you buy an investment first? How are your investments performing? Are you on track to where you want to go? And this is really, really useful for beginning investors to tell them which way to go, to formulate a plan, to have a solid foundation for their growing their portfolio. And it's very, very valuable for experienced investors, even just to get a second opinion. So if you're interested in getting a strategic property plan, go to metropole.com.au and just leave your details on the Contact Us page, and we'll get in contact with you about it. So A property strategist is strategic, while a buyer's agent is an order taker. They fill an order given to them to find you a property, and they're going to be biased to areas in which they've got expertise. Sometimes this may not be in your best interest. On the other hand, only a property strategist has the expertise to design that order to suit your specific needs. They're going to be your long-term wealth creation partner, and a good property strategist should annually review the performance of your portfolio and provide recommendations of any opportunity, as well as when it's best to do nothing. Sometimes the right thing to do is nothing. You just hibernate for another year and wait for the market to change, or your situation to change, or the equity in your properties to increase. So a good property strategist is with you for life, while a buyer's agent shouldn't be. So how do you know the difference? Well, one of the questions you could ask is, how do you make your money? And do you disclose your commissions? How we get paid at Metropole depends upon the services our clients request. Sometimes all they need is a $29 book. Sometimes they need a strategic property plan. Sometimes they go to Ken Race at Wealth Advisory and have a wealth plan. But either way, at Metropole, our fees are always disclosed in full before we start working with a client. And we take no commissions from vendors, from salespeople or developers. So there's no vested interest. There's no bias in what we recommend. Some of our clients pay a fee for service, as I said, for a strategic wealth plan. Others just pay a success fee when we research, source and negotiate and secure an investment grade property for them. So how will you know if you're getting ripped off? Now, that's a really good question, as you need to find somebody who is going to, I keep saying the same words, give you unbiased advice, which is independent of any particular location or any property. So many so-called advisors will only tell you about properties on their stock list, or that their buyer's agents can source in a particular state because they only in a particular state. That's already biased. On the other hand, a trusted advisor tailors the recommendations to your personal circumstances, and as I said before, warns you about the rewards, but also tells you about the risks. And as I said there, advice isn't biased to a property, a strategy, a service. It's nothing that's going to be sold to you. They should have their own team of on-the-ground buyer's agents available in a number of states, not fly-in, fly-out buyer's agents. They can't get the same, they don't have the same perspective. They fly in, they think they've nabbed the bargain. They haven't. So one of the first questions I'd ask a potential advisor is, how are you getting paid? Because this is going to reveal a lot. If they're offering free service, or they're being paid by a third party, such as a developer or a property vendor, then their advice can't be independent. They can't be on their side. Look, put simply, if the advice is free, you're the product. Your advisor, I think, should also be qualified and a member of a recognised organisation, such as the Property Investment Professionals Association. And they've really got to be an investor themselves, don't they? They should have a thorough understanding, not just of property, but finance, economics, the taxation system, well, as it relates to property anyway. Similarly, your advisor shouldn't have any properties for sale, should have a number of investment options available to you, depending upon your circumstances, and shouldn't make any recommendations on the first meeting. They shouldn't be creating a sense of urgency. Now, it's interesting. As I said, all successful investors that I know are prepared to pay for advice. They have professional advisors in all categories of their life. On the other hand, most unsuccessful investors get no advice, or they get free advice, and then they wonder what went wrong. Of course, at face value, professional advice can appear expensive. Given so much free information around, people think, well, why should I pay somebody for it? Free advice from estate agents because they're getting paid by the seller, free advice from property marketers selling off the planned properties, or house and land package advisors because they're getting paid by the developer, and actually quite handsomely sometimes. That's why, in my view, you should only be taking advice from somebody who doesn't have a vested interest and is working in your best interests. Now, if you're thinking, I've already got a financial planner, do I need a property advisor? The simple answer is almost certainly yes. You need to speak to a property strategist because most financial planners are unable to give you advice on residential real estate. Now, this is a real shame, of course, because many Australians go to a financial planner seeking advice on the best investment options for their financial future, yet their planner's not going to point them towards property because their license doesn't allow them to do it. And many of those who do Those financial planners who do point you to property, they tend to make significant commissions by advising their clients to buy poor-performing, off-the-plan properties from project marketers because they give these financial planners significant incentives. That's one of the reasons we set up Metropole Wealth Advisory as a high-end financial planning business that is able to advise on property because of our license. Have you ever wondered how much a property marketer, a project marketer, a spruiker pays these advisors, these financial planners to sell a property to one of their clients? Look, we've never sold that type of property or received that type of commission, but because I've got a very large database of listeners to my podcast and readers to my newsletter, I often receive unsolicited offers from developers and project marketers asking me to recommend their properties to our clients, in other words, to try and sell them. I've been offered 5% commission just to pass a name on, not even to make a sale, but commissions are often closer to 8 or 10%, and I've seen as high as 12% commissions offered to financial planners and other people just for referring names. That's got to be built into the cost of those new and off-the-plan properties. That's why so many people fail when they buy them. Of course, there's all those other marketing costs built in as well, so the unfortunate investor pays for those as well. So what are property spruikers? Those people who push properties on you with their hidden agenda. So let's have a look at those. What you should be avoiding if you're getting advice is avoiding somebody who's got a one-size-fits-all approach. Look, just like everyone doesn't fit in the same pair of trousers, one strategy is not going to fit every investor. While my strategy is only to buy high growth investment grade properties, there are variables within this depending upon investors' financial position, their income, their age, their goals, their cash flow, their hopes. Look, the list goes on and on. So while I have a strategy, there's multiple variations of it, and a professional investment advisor is going to be able to create a detailed plan that reflects all of those things, which means the strategy is uniquely tailored for you, for each investor. On the other hand, a spruiker has a one-size-fits-all approach. He says, this great building or this good estate's exactly where you should invest, and maybe it's because of the tax deductions or the incentive you're getting. That's not a strategy. That's a recipe for disaster, which leads me to the next point that spruikers don't do. They don't tell you about the risks. So when recommending a new apartment, the property spruiker could concentrate on the potential to claim various bits and pieces of tax time or other incentives they give you, or rent-free or rent guarantee. They won't outline the fact that the investor is going to have the cash flow to pay for the mortgage from one year to the next before receiving that supposed money for nothing back from the tax funds. They won't talk about the risks of buying new or off-the-plan properties, such as the propensity for oversupply, because developers tend to get a bit carried away. They're not going to tell you that the majority of properties bought off the plan on completion value in considerably less than what the contract price is. They won't talk to you about the risks of those sort of properties not increasing in value at the same pace as superior investments like well-located established properties. Why not? Because you may decide not to buy the stock that they're spruiking. On the other hand, a professional property advisor outlines the potential risks and rewards to all their clients at the outset. Because while their strategies are proven, the world can go topsy-turvy for all sorts of reasons, things we can't imagine, let alone control. Okay, another thing to avoid is people who talk a lot about investing, but ones who don't do it themselves. Many online experts can talk the talk, but they haven't really walked the walk. Perhaps they've bought a handful of properties because of some market growth that everyone in that location benefited from. They suddenly start shouting their newfound expertise from the top of the roofs. I often say a rising tide lifts all ships, but when the tide goes out, you're going to learn who's not afloat, who's sinking. You can see who's swimming naked, according to Warren Buffett. So professional property advisors should have a substantial level of experience over a number of market cycles. This means they should have invested in at least over a couple of decades and should have evidence of their property investment achievements. A spruiker will likely use an example in recent times where a professional will be able to show, not just tell, you about properties they've invested in personally and professionally over the years. Also, a spruiker probably doesn't follow the non-strategy they're spruiking, whereas a professional will live by. They're going to live and breathe what they're telling you. So, some more red flags to watch out for. Anyone who's got a stock list of properties to sell you. Anyone who offers you a property rather than an investment strategy. Anyone who gives advice before they've found out all about you, about your needs, about your plans, about your risk profile. People who offer a one-stop shop, particularly if they want you to use their lawyers rather than your own. Somebody independent to vet your contract carefully. Somebody who tells you that negative gearing is a sound property strategy. I'd avoid those too, because it's not an investment strategy at all. It's a consequence of how you finance your property, but people will tell you to do that because it's going to save you tax. Avoid somebody who suggests property values are always going to keep rising, because they won't. They don't. We know that. Avoid anyone who offers you a rental guarantee to sweeten the deal. Why would they need to give money away if it was a good deal? Avoid somebody who presses you into saying yes quickly to whatever it is they're offering, whether it's deciding to attend a seminar, signing up with their company to gain advice, or any other sales tactics. And please avoid anyone who downplays the risks and related costs of getting involved in property investment. Wow, well, this has been a long show, but I hope you're getting the point. The bottom line is that there's only so much you can learn from the financial media, from books and from seminars. While you can gain knowledge from the internet, you can't gain experience, you can't gain perspective. That takes years to acquire, and it comes at a cost. It's also too difficult for beginners and even for more experienced investors to gain the perspective into what's happening in today's fast-moving property markets. And that's why I suggest you leverage off the experience of a professional property advisor, a property strategist, one who's independent, one who's unbiased. Now, sound financial advice is never expensive. On the other hand, most investors pay a huge learning fee to the market by buying the wrong property in the wrong location at the wrong price. So while they haven't paid anyone for advice upfront, boy, are they paying the market to learn their mistakes in the long term. Now, that was a long session. And some may say, hey, that was a self-serving session, Michael, because at Metropole you're property strategists and buyers agents and you're plugging your services. No, the real intention of my chat with you today was to stop people making the common mistakes they make because, as I've said right at the beginning, most investors never develop the financial freedom they deserve because they get no advice or they get the wrong advice. So why would I not tell you where to get the right advice from? And while Metropole do that, there's definitely other good property strategists out there, but most people giving advice are not strategists. They're order takers or buyers agents or marketers. I set up Metropole way back in 1979 as my family investment company, and over the years we started getting involved in property renovations, property development, and around the year 2000 starting to help a lot of outside people rather than just my joint venture partners with wealth creation. And our job is to help our clients grow, protect and pass on their wealth. We help beginning investors get going. We help experienced investors along their journey. And we help sophisticated investors develop financial freedom through property renovations and development through our project management arms. We've been involved in over $3 billion worth of property transactions over the years. We currently manage over $2 billion worth of properties for clients. So why wouldn't you get somebody like that on your side to try and help you? I guess, yes, it is a bit self-serving, but I'd love to be part of your journey. And if some of what I spoke about today resonated, why not have a chat with the team at Metropole? Go to metropole.com.au and find out about us and leave in details and we'll be in contact with you. Or keep listening to these podcasts each week and my regular property update daily blogs, because I'd love to be part of your journey and I really want to stop you going down the wrong path. And if you'd like to stop other people going down the wrong path, please pass this session on to a friend or two who's starting to get an investment or going down the wrong path, or even if they're doing okay, I hope they're going to learn something from it and it's going to help us all educate more investors and stop them making the common mistakes and help them develop financial freedom through investment in property. That's what we're all about, isn't it? I look forward to having a chat with you again next week. Now, if you really want to take your property investment to the next level, why not join me for 2 days in October 20th and 21st at the Property Renovations and Development Workshop in Melbourne. I've run that since 2003. It's going to teach you the business of property renovations and development, why not go to realestateworkshop.com.au, realestateworkshop.com.au, and find out all about my 2-day property renovations and development workshop. You'll even get lots of time, one-on-one time with me. You'll have a final implementation one-on-one session with me, and it comes with my personal guarantee. I look forward to having a chat with you again next week about property investment, success, and money.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect and pass on their wealth through strategic property advice. If you got value from today's show, we'd really appreciate it if you would leave a review, and we'll read it out on a future show, and Michael will gift you one of his books as a way of saying thank you. Just go to michaelyardneypodcast.com/review and let us know what you think. If you don't already subscribe, head over to iTunes or your favourite Android app. You'll find us there as Michael Yardney Podcast. If you'd like to gain instant access to the show notes, head across to michaelyardneypodcast.com. Watch out for our show next week. You'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success and money in around 30 minutes.